Of all the new ideas introduced into the Zelda franchise by Breath of the Wild, perhaps the most intriguing are the Yiga, the red-clad assassins hellbent on thwarting the resurrected hero at seemingly every crossroad. Today I'd like to take a look at the Yiga's history, architecture, and overall role in the series to make their case as the most compelling addition to the era of the Wilds games. So grab your muddy bananas, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. Like most everything in Breath of the Wild, the history of the Yiga can be broadly divided into three parts. The story of now, the story of 100 years ago, and the story of 10,000 years ago. However, our tale begins just prior to this 10,000 year mark with the ancient and wise Sheikah. As the legend goes, by harnessing the power of their unmatched technology, the Sheikah developed Hyrule into a highly advanced civilization, protecting it from destruction time and time again. When the first incarnation of Calamity Ganon struck Hyrule Kingdom, the Sheikah, through this technology, created both the four divine beasts and the guardians, and together with the princess and the chosen hero, overwhelmed and sealed this evil amaranthine force. Though the kingdom was saved, fear festered in the heart of Hyrule's king, as he conjured a shadow of treachery in which to shroud the Sheikah. Having long served and safeguarded the kingdom, the Sheikah and their unrivaled technology were now seen as a threat to Hyrule. Thus, the king, burdened with the duty of protecting his people and possessed by thoughts of potential treason, exiled the Sheikah, forcing them to cast off their technology, once seen as the power of the gods, abandon their research, and to live normal lives, under the threat of severe punishment. Many acquiesced, having no other choice, accepting the king's verdict with respect to their ancient ties to the royal family, settling down in what is now Kakariko Village. But for many others, the king's orders fomented resentment. For time immemorial, the Sheikah and their technology had protected Hyrule, protected the king. Having saved both yet again, the king would banish them? Betray them? And so they became what he feared, betraying him and his kingdom in turn, forming a militant group of assassins who swore allegiance to Calamity Ganon and promised the destruction of Hyrule, fleeing to a fissure in the orange rock of the Gerudo Desert, beyond the reach of Hyrule's king. Even so, a long era of peace ensued, the history of this militant group remaining obscure. Then, 100 years ago, with the revival of Calamity Ganon imminent, Hyrule's current king, King Rhoam, sought the legendary Sheikah tech, the divine beasts, to aid in the battle once again. The assassins, now formally known as the Yiga clan, began operating in the shadows in order to eliminate those who would stand against the returning Ganon, plotting but failing to assassinate Princess Zelda, the king's daughter tasked with sealing this iteration of the Calamity. Just before the present day, with Link's awakening close at hand, the Yiga, now led by Master Koga, installed spies in Kakariko Village and disguised themselves as travelers to learn of the whereabouts of the chosen hero, while simultaneously stealing a precious heirloom from the Gerudo. This history is compellingly complicated, but it serves two purposes. The first is to reorient us to the Sheikah and to introduce us to their technology. We learn, as has been consistent throughout the series, that the Sheikah are long-serving loyal stewards to Hyrule's royal family. In the era of the Wilds, however, they are much more akin to state scientists and engineers. Secondly, it introduces a new wrinkle into the Sheikah's relationship with Hyrule and the royal family. What happens when two historical allies grow distrusting of one another? This is an interesting question, and the result is the splintered factions of Sheikah, who live relatively normal lives with the few exceptional scientists helping a revived Link, and the Yiga, who inherit the Sheikah's more unsavory aspects from the era of myth, not only functioning as tenebrous assassins, swearing to destroy the very thing they historically once protected, but acting as inversions of the Sheikah, thematically and literally, as represented by their symbol. This symbol not only literally inverts the Sheikah symbol, but also relates to other real-world symbols like the inverted cross, which has more recently become a symbol of anti-Christian sentiment, and the practice of flying a country's flag upside down, an internationally recognized sign of distress, though symbolically a protest against government orders, like the banishment of your technology under threat of force. Their contrasting colors further solidify this inversion. The blue of the Sheikah technology symbolizes Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, and is a color often associated with trust, stability, and calm, while the red of the Yiga symbolizes blood. Din, the goddess of power, and by extension Ganon, a color often associated with urgency, passion, and danger. But perhaps most intriguingly, and though they eventually go too far, the Yiga's choice to defy the king's orders is ultimately an understandable one. The connection and inversion of their Sheikah origins are also clear in the Yiga clan's architecture. Kakariko is a secluded village hidden within the protective crown of the mountaintop, and is a mix of Japanese mountain village motifs and the shinobi aspects often associated with the Sheikah. In Japan, frogs are symbols of good fortune and safe returns, and so their statues are abundant here as well. In Kakariko, the color red guides you through the village and highlights points of interest. Red Ofuda, talismans of blessing and protection, hang over the many pathways that wind throughout the village, and large banners denote shops. Alternatively, where the desert sands meet the sheer cliffs of the Gerudo Highlands, a crack in the walls known as Caruso Valley hides a much more insidious dwelling. The winding valley, which eventually leads to the Yiga clan hideout, is rimmed with the familiar frog statues, perhaps to mock you, perhaps to lull you into a false sense of welcoming security. But here something is off. From above, this multitude of frog statues, some blindfolded by the Yiga symbol, spies down into the valley, creating an air of surveillance. Red Ofuda also line the canyon but act as noisemakers, alerting the Yiga to intruders, until just before the entrance, a wall of watchers halts any progress, and an ambush ensues. Upon entering the Yiga clan hideout, it is clear that, as outcasts, the Yiga have no real home. Instead, they have desecrated a Gerudo archaeological site, mocking the very mantras carved into the stone. Like the frog statues outside, the statues of the 8 heroines are masked in Yiga symbol shrouds. Massive banners hang from the alcoves hiding secret corridors. Patterns shared by the Yiga and Sheikah are scrawled on the floor and sides of statues. But where the Sheikah live in tranquility within their mountain village, the Yiga are quite drastically harbored within the cold stone of the mountain. Like an assassin, the hideout is built around surveillance, concealment, and stockpiling mighty bananas. The areas within maintain the Japanese aesthetic, sickly lanterns, pseudo-war banners, ofuda, combined to resemble a bathhouse or shrine. There's a storeroom that overlooks the main chamber with its siege tower-like columns. But it's all held in a dim glow, looming in shadow. The eye symbols and frog statues remain ever watchful. A final room contains ceremonial drums, an all-seeing eye, and a hidden passage that leads outside to a hollowed mountain crater, similarly outfitted in a shrine aesthetic dappled with noisemakers. A gaping chasm is ringed with lanterns, and it's here we come face to face with the Yiga leader. But the Yiga clan, as Link interacts with them in the present, have a bit of an identity crisis. They are simultaneously brutally violent and comedically inept, kidnapping Gerudo women and stealing the Thunder Helm, while also falling for randomly appearing bananas and slowly being bowled over. But I suppose this isn't too out of place with their Sheikah counterparts. Though past iterations of the Sheikah have been largely stoic and cold, characters like Robbie and Pura are both extremely scientific and laughably cringeworthy. But the contrast within the Yiga is a bit more stark. For one thing, they are incredibly well dispersed and powerful. They have infiltrated broader Hyrule in order to ambush the chosen hero, conjuring themselves out of thin air or by disguising themselves as travelers. This marks them as strong magic wielders or inheritors of a divergent lineage of technology, disappearing and reappearing in a puff of spells and charms, and interestingly, one of the only consistent enemies to drop rupees when defeated. One such Yiga spy, Dorian, deployed to Kakariko Village, falls in love with a Sheikah woman and has 2 children. He seeks to leave the Yiga, In response, the Yiga kill his wife, forcing him to continue to be an informant, lest the same fate befall his children, Paya and Impa. And then there is their strange and, quite frankly, unexplainable obsession with mighty bananas. Though perhaps all that potassium helps with teleportation-induced leg cramping. But it also serves as the perfect distraction for Link to infiltrate the Yiga clan's hideout and confront Master Koga in all his wacky glory. His design carries through the eye motif found deep within the hideout, and as a warrior, he's able to summon additional elements like transparent walls for defense, giant boulders, and spiked metal balls. But beneath this mighty exterior, he is kind of, well, a complete buffoon. The Zelda franchise itself often mingles these lighter, silly aspects with more serious themes, though I'm not sure if it really lands when you've infiltrated the lair of your would-be assassins to see them prancing after bananas they already have an overabundance of. But other than their constant pursuit of the hero, they don't really seem all that concerned with Calamity Ganon, swearing allegiance more so to Master Koga. Once Koga is defeated, the hideout is empty, and tougher variations begin appearing across Hyrule. Their attitudes now more Master Koga focused when engaging with Link. This seeming contradiction persists in Tears of the Kingdom. Having survived the chasm, Master Koga finds himself in the depths, where the Yiga scavenge together fortresses reminiscent of their hideout, now full of Zonai devices, and actually show quite the engineering wit, being the only group that actually engineers something out of these devices. Though Koga and the Yiga clan are still largely played for laughs. Ever the paradox, the Yiga clan are both entwined and separate from Hyrule and its broader history. Through their cultural and architectural connections to the Sheikah, they represent a faction within the Zelda universe that is surprisingly compelling, acting as inversions of the tribe from which they defected, turning their backs on the kingdom and hunting our hero. I just hope that wherever that rocket shot Koga, he's planning a comeback that is equally comical and brutal. As always, a special thank you to our channel members, and a special shout out to our newest member, Sam T7000. I also want to give a shout out to Talbot and the website Architecture of Zelda, from which I pulled some thoughts regarding the Yiga and Sheikah's architecture, and whose essays I have really been enjoying lately. Thanks for watching.